Welcome to the Story Lab. Today we go to the world of sails, waves, and precious gold as we talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Specifically, the third Pirates movie. The third Pirates of the Caribbean movie always felt too long and too convoluted, with its many characters, straight-up magic plot points and everyone betraying everyone at some point. Let's try to correct that with our Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End rewrite. Let's quickly look at the story of the second and third Pirates movies. The second movie left us off with Jack Sparrow having been eaten by the Kraken, and his friends deciding to bring him back from the dead with the help of Tia Damala and the returned Barbossa. Also, Davy Jones becomes subservient to the East India Trading Company and the villain Lord Beckett. James Norrington is back serving Beckett as Will. Will Turner and his bride Elizabeth are having troubles, after Elizabeth nearly fell for Jack at the end of the movie and finally did kiss him, if only to ensure Jack's sacrifice. Crucially, Will Turner has also sworn to return to the Flying Dutchman to free his father. Now, the third movie sees the hero steal a map to the underworld, go there and find both Jack and the Black Pearl largely unchanged there. Lord Beckett is hunting pirates all over the world. There is a magic call to a gathering of pirate lords to decide what to do about it. Both Barbossa and Jack have to attend the meeting as well. Barbossa manipulates the pirates into enabling him to free the sea goddess Calypso, Tia Damala's true nature. A final battle occurs, where Calypso causes a storm, the Pearl and Dutchman fight and Davy Jones is killed. Will Turner takes his place as captain of the Dutchman. Okay, so what are the problems with this story? Or what are the disconnects between the second and third installments? Well, Jack Sparrow is relatively unchanged by the experience of dying at the end of the second movie and seems to have learned little from the events of said movie, which focused heavily on him. It is not explained how Barbossa returned from the dead, or why he is necessary to find the way back there. The threat of Lord Beckett is not well defined in the third movie, and it seems instead that Davy Jones is still the main villain. Speaking of Jones, his ship the Dutchman seems much less powerful than in the second movie. In addition, the threat or influence of Calypso on the events is unclear. And the fact that Davy Jones had to raise Black Pearl from the sea the last time around, which was the backstory behind the events of the second movie, seems to be forgotten. And there are a couple more concerns we have with the third movie. Everyone is betraying everyone all the time, making for a confusing storyline and little character development. Some characters, like Lord Beckett, Calypso, and of course James Norrington, just show up in the middle of the movie without doing much before or after. The stakes are very unclear. Ships seem to teleport around Earth rather than to sail for weeks. The setting overall is not clear. Despite Barbossa having been Jack's first mate, they are both considered pirate lords? Okay, so let's put together our ingredients for the rewrite. Follow the larger story of the third movie. No betrayal left and right. More clearly defined threats, especially the threat from Lord Beckett. No more magic than necessary. No teleporting ships. More story about the return from the dead. More connection to the events of the second movie. A different main focus character, Elizabeth. The lab is now analyzing this mixture. And here we go, the rewritten version of Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. The movie opens with a familiar scene. Davy Jones walks along a line of battered sailors and gives his speech about service on his ship. But there is a twist. Just as Davy wants to give an order, he is stopped by the English. Lord Beckett steps forward and reminds the audience that he is now in control by sorting out pirates from the victims and imprisoning them on his ship. As we zoom out, we see that Beckett has an entire fleet of ships surrounding the lone wrecked vessel. We continue to follow the group of captured pirates as they are paraded in front of a crowd and then collectively hanged. Again, we zoom out and see hundreds of pirates hanged. Then, the title card of the movie appears over the grim opening music. As the movie properly begins, we start off in Singapore just like the real movie. Our heroes, now under the leadership of Barbossa, are visiting the pirate Lord Saraphone because they need a ship that can sail the endless sea of the Pacific Ocean. Initially, Saraphone is not willing to just gift them a ship, but he is convinced by the fiery passion in the eyes of Elizabeth, and by Barbossa's speech that the pirates should hold together in these dangerous times, a statement that is almost immediately confirmed by the attack of English soldiers right after. A confusing fight breaks out, wherein we follow Elizabeth, and see that she has developed quite the skills with a sword. As the Asian and Caribbean pirates fight against the soldiers, Barbossa takes Saraphone aside and talks to him quietly. He says that the time of the pirates would soon end if they did not win back control of the sea, that used to be so wild that only they could thrive on it. Barbossa proposes to Saraphone to assemble the pirate lords and force them to free the sea. Saraphone seems to understand what Barbossa is getting at, and asks whether the captain knows where she is. Barbossa only hints that she is part of his party even now. Thus, Saraphone agrees to sail out himself and call upon the other pirate lords, while Barbossa searches for Jack. Though they do not realize it, their conversation was overheard by Beckett's spy Mr. Mercer. Mercer immediately contacts Lord Beckett. To do so, he speaks to the severed head of that one seashell crewman of the Flying Dutchman. The head relates the information to his body, which sits in Beckett's office on the other side of the planet, writing down the spy's message. Immediately, Beckett decides that something had to be done about all of this. He sends Norrington with the Dutchman after Barbossa, since no other ship would reach our heroes in time or be able to follow them should they really make the journey to the land of the dead. Beckett himself intends to chase after Saraphone and find out where the other pirate lords are. We follow our heroes that are now traveling in the Asian ship across the empty ocean, towards seemingly absolutely nothing. As they approach the end of the world, Gibbs tells a story about the misty islands and the transitory nebulas that part this world and the world of the dead. The crew also asks how Tia Damala had been able to bring back Barbossa, but not Jack. Tia explains that Barbossa had been a restless soul, traveling by himself right to the edge of the world of the dead, so that all she had to do was reach out and pull him through. Jack, however, would be in Davy Jones' locker, the innermost part of the other world. Soon after, they do approach the mysterious islands and start passing through the mists. Coming through, they suddenly find themselves on top of an eternal waterfall, right at the edge of the earth. The crew panics, but Barbossa only laughs and continues straight onwards. And to everyone's surprise, their ship doesn't fall into the ravine, but continues on still water, as if nothing had ever been there. The crew had entered the realm of the dead. Meanwhile, the Flying Dutchman arrives outside the transitory nebulas and finds that the ship with our heroes is already through it. The villains decide to wait in the mists for their return. Our heroes are quite successful. They find Jack on a barren island in the middle of nothing. It takes a few minutes, but they can eventually convince Jack Sparrow to come back with them. On the journey out of the land of the dead, we can see that Jack did indeed change. He still puts forward facade of the raggedy pirate, but he quickly psychoanalyzes the crew members, identifying that Barbossa has a secret objective, that Will is angry with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth herself is extremely tense and yet unproportionally joyous about having gotten Jack back. While speaking to her, Jack carefully manipulates Elizabeth, until she finally blizz out what she is thinking. She hates how everything turned out in the second movie and is dead set on making everything right again. What she means by that is getting back Jack onto the Pearl, getting rid of the threats of Davy Jones and Lord Beckett, and finally marry Will and live with him in peace. Jack tries to tell her that it might simply not be possible to put all those pieces back together like that, and that she might be on a path that could only lead to sorrow. But their conversation is interrupted when we get the scene with Elizabeth's dead father passing them by in the little boats. And just as Jack wanted to tell her, Elizabeth almost loses it because of this loss. Meanwhile, Jack tries to talk to Will about Elizabeth, but realizes that Will himself is focused on rescuing his father at all costs. Now, our heroes reach the transitory mists again, but just as they pass through, they are jumped by the Flying Dutchman and shot to pieces by the much stronger ship. As it becomes clear that they were about to lose the fight, Will uses a chance to sneak aboard the Dutchman. Only Jack sees what he is planning, but instead of stopping him, he gifts Will his compass for the way back. The rest of the crew soon turns from fighting the enemy to fighting to keep their ship afloat. Just as Davy Jones is about to sink the ship once and for all, Norrington recognizes Elizabeth among the heroes. Immediately Norrington orders to cease fire and to instead let the battered ship drift back through the mists to the land of the dead. Davy Jones is so angry about this order that he might have risked it and killed Norrington, had the cursed crew not in this moment discovered Will on board. They bring him to Jones, who laughs at the hero's attempt to sneak aboard. Upon Norrington's order, he transports Will to Lord Beckett. Meanwhile, our heroes are still floating on the sinking bits of what had been their ship in the transitory mists. Hopeless, they lament that they have no way of getting a ship. But Tia Daimler objects, there is still one ship they could reach, the Black Pearl. Naturally the heroes are confused. But Daimler explains that the Pearl had sunk before and could be raised again. Jack objects, last time, Daimler had told him he couldn't raise the Pearl, which is why he had to make that deal with Davy Jones in the first place. But Tia only smiles and explains, only someone who had passed into the land of the dead and out of it again could raise the ship. Thus, by now, they all qualify. And really, as our heroes peek over the edge of their makeshift raft, they see the Pearl, whole, down there in the waters. A triumphant scene begins, where our heroes work together to connect all the leftover pieces of ropes into one long one, and dive down to connect them to the sunken ship. As soon as everything is fixed, the crew uses the rests of the anchor raiser to start pulling, and indeed, working all together, they raise the black ship from the waves, pulling it up to the surface and once more boarding the Black Pearl. Back in the world of the living, Will Turner is brought to Lord Beckett and we get the scene from the original movie, where Beckett and Davy Jones explain Jones' backstory and Calypso. Following this discussion, Will realizes that he knows who Calypso is. He refuses to tell this to Beckett and Jones though. When Beckett asks why then he should let Turner live, Will instead offers the services of Jack's compass to navigate towards the other pirates that Beckett wished to capture. Thus, Beckett's flagship and the Flying Dutchman are soon able to catch up to the ship of Saurphone. This brings them right back to the transitory mists, since Saurphone came looking for Barbossa there. Thus, everyone visits the emergence of the Pearl, and Beckett could not have been more furious. The two pirate ships exchange some pleasantries, before realizing the presence of the enemy ships. Here we get a version of the famous everyone points a gun at everyone else scene. The conflict is resolved when Elizabeth agrees to join Saurphone on his ship, since that seemed to be essential to making everything right again. Then, the two ships would take different paths to Shipwreck Cove hoping to shake the chasers. Thus, Beckett is forced to split up his ships. Norrington decides to go after Phone's ship, thinking that Elizabeth must be on the Pearl. Beckett follows Jack's ship but has no chance to catch up with the Pearl, losing her in the open sea. The Flying Dutchman, however, quickly goes alongside Phone's ship, and just as in the original movie, Saurphone himself is killed during the attack, passing his command to Elizabeth. Phone's crew is captured and brought to the Dutchman, where Elizabeth meets Will's father, who tries to tell her that they should leave him behind. Elizabeth would not listen though. Soon after, Norrington finally shows us the right thing and frees them, though he is murdered for it. Just as in the original, we then get the Pirate Council, the discussion about freeing Calypso to take back control of the sea, and the vote for a pirate king, which Jack manipulates to elect Elizabeth. Grumpy, Barbossa tucks away the pirates' totems, then climbs onto the central mountain and begins the ceremony to free Calypso. At the same time, Beckett arrives with his fleet and Will Turner, who manages to escape sneak upon the Flying Dutchman once more. As in the original, Calypso turns into a storm cloud, but she isn't creating a vortex, instead just making a really bad storm that completely disrupts the English fleet. The pirates, still right next to the mountains of Shipwreck Cove, wait, while Beckett's ships desperately try to navigate and one by one come out of the storm and right in front of the pirates' cannons. Elizabeth, however, remembers that Will is still in there somewhere and orders Jack and Barbossa to take her in there with the Pearl. Soon after, they find the Dutchman and with her Will. Here we get the big battle between the ships, during which Jack gets to Davy's chest and almost gets a chance to stab the heart, and Will and Elizabeth marry. Cut in throughout the fight though, we see how Beckett's ship manages to get its bearings again and slowly approaches the fight between Dutchman and Pearl. The movie ends similar to how the original did. Will is stabbed. Jack brings the heart to Elizabeth and tells her that she could never make everything right again, but that not quite right was still better than nothing. Thus, Elizabeth makes the decision to let Will stab the heart. Davy Jones is beaten and Will becomes the captain of the Dutchman. At that moment Beckett shows up, but Pearl and Dutchman work together to blow him up, ending the battle. The ending scenes are exactly the same as in the original movie. Elizabeth and Will enjoy their one day, while all the pirates depart again and go on to the next journey. The only thing that is obviously missing is the cliffhanger with the Fountain of Youth on the map, since in our version there is simply no map. And this concludes our story. Let's quickly summarize. Our heroes go to Singapore to find a ship to sail to the edge of the world. They do that and find Jack there. Lord Beckett learns of their plan and sends the Dutchman after them. The Dutchman shoots up the heroes as they return from the Reel of the Dead, but doesn't finish the job. Our heroes raise the Black Pearl from beneath the waves and continue their journey. Elizabeth briefly joins Seraphone only to be made captain when the ship is attacked soon after. Everything comes together at Shipwreck Cove, where Calypso is freed and upsets the waters. The English fleet cannot handle the storm and goes down, while the pirates and the Flying Dutchman battle it out. Will Turner is stabbed, but Elizabeth finally lets go of the desire to make everything right and lets Will stab Davy Jones' heart, taking over as the captain of the Flying Dutchman. Beckett is utterly defeated. What do you think? Is that an improved version of the film? Please note that everything presented here is simply the results of an experiment. No part of this presentation is intended as a correction of an existing story or claims to be the real story. The selection or omission of any parts of the source material is not to be understood as commentary, positive or negative, on the original productions. These are simply thoughts and experiments based on existing material, and none of it could be created without the work of all those involved in creating the original works. As with any scientific result, you may utilize any of the story ideas that resulted from these experiments for your own experiments or production, while citing this experiment as its source. It is now closing time for our lab. Goodbye until next time.